Hi, so if you haven't seen the Mandela Catalog already, I recommend watching that before coming to this. The channel only has about half an hour worth of content, but it's worth watching. Now, from what I know, the creator of this series has made every single one of these videos on his phone, which makes them a lot more impressive because I don't even know how to make them on my computer. Yeah, his name's Alex Kister if you want to go look him up on YouTube, or just type in Mandela Catalog, I'm sure you'll find him. Now, these videos in particular interest me not only because they're blowing up right now, but because they're this new form of cosmic horror that I actually haven't seen anything like before. It's really unique in its way that it uses religious imagery and also does analog or VHS horror. So I'll explain the first video on the channel first. Overthrown is a really interesting video. It starts off with the angel Gabriel coming down, but his face is covered, and you get these distorted images of a face whenever he's uncovered, and he starts saying really off-putting things to people, such as,
"I will fool the shepherds. I will know their greatest fear. I will know your greatest fear."
It's like an old cartoon that's been edited into this new and profoundly scary video. So Jesus appears in this video, and he begins whispering these things about how he's their savior, and then his face gets distorted and it becomes harder to understand what he's saying. Alright, so fast forward about 1980 years, I'd say. Probably somewhere in the 80s, 90s. Not sure. We start getting into alternates. Now, this is the main horror of these videos. Alternates are this creature of sorts that mimics the appearance of its victims. Now, they can either look exactly like the victim or slightly off, or even completely disproportionate and inhuman. Either way, it's pretty terrifying to picture just a disturbed, distorted version of yourself in your home. Now, from my understanding, they start off as intruders, and they take your form and become alternates. So, in the first video after the Overthrown one, talks about the think principle. Now, the first step of the think principle is T, to tell. So to tell is to tell an authority figure about what you saw, and then the second step is to hinder, which is H, and it's basically saying to attack the alternate, try to limit its movement. I is to identify the class type, meaning which of the three types it is, because it can either look just like you, look slightly different, or look completely distorted. That is important. And is to neutralize the alternate if safe to do so. I'm assuming this just means like beat him up, kill him. I would. Now, this is where the video gets interesting. The final letter for a moment says K, and then it says, which I'm not going to say for this video, but it makes you start to wonder, is this video being shown to me by the alternates, by some kind of negative source? And then the K changes from that to know your place, and then it says there is not room for two of us. So yeah, then that video ends with it's showing the different class types of alternate, another photo of Jesus that gets distorted. So then we move on to the most interesting video on the channel, in my opinion, which is the Mandela Catalog Volume 1. This video starts with the think principle again, before showing us this phone call between Mark and
Caesar,
in which
Caesar
asks Mark to go over to his house and turn on his security cameras. So Mark goes over to the house, in which he encounters the intruder, or, you know, probably
Caesar.
Alternate. So the implication here is that Mark went to the house, he turned on the cameras, and what he saw was incomprehensibly disturbing. It followed him home, and it took his form, and it basically stood there and haunted him while no one came to help him until he saw no other option but to end his life. Now, if you're wondering how does this tie into the religious imagery, I think that basically Jesus was some kind of demonic force in this story, and a couple thousand years later decided to plant these alternates in order to wipe out the human race. I mean, we're not given a motive, but it makes for some very interesting horror. I think the more you think about the idea of these intruders and how helpless of a situation it is, because apparently the police don't answer you. If other people come to help you, then they might just be followed home and do the same thing. It's a really unique piece of horror, and I really like the way it's presented in these videos. And the video ends with a really interesting drawn segment of a child's perspective. I decided I'm going to explain this better. We are shown a young Mark in his home, and he has drawn all these images of a night where he walked out of his room and one of the intruders was in his house. Considering that he's an adult in the phone call at the beginning of the video, shows that these intruders have been a thing for decades. Intruder Alert's a really interesting video. Basically, intruders are kidnapping children on a mass scale, and people are being informed to not investigate their children crying until the sound has completely stopped. Now, obviously, this would be a broadcast from the other side telling people not to intervene so they can get away with what they're doing. If that's not the case, then I don't understand what the point is. I can't help but think that this has some kind of underlying themes about how the media can't be trusted, but I don't know. The creator could have had his own ideas, and this is just some way of interpreting it that he didn't intend, which is just a cool thing about art. The next video is about a disorder that exists in this universe called MAD, or Metaphysical Awareness Disorder. And my interpretation of this video is that people who have witnessed intruders basically lose their minds. And we've already seen that because people are, dying as a result of these intruders being in their homes and taking their place and becoming alternates. My camera stopped recording a while ago and I didn't notice until now, so I'm just gonna pick up where I think it left off. It says to avoid religious or philosophical practices. I'm not exactly sure how it's meant to be interpreted, but I feel like it wants people to not think critically or freely. They don't want people to think freely, so they're more susceptible to the intruder's psychological warfare. Now, the creepiest part of this video and the highlight of it for me is that at the end it says, do not open your eyes if you can feel them getting closer to you, or if they're right up to your face. Now, the mental imagery for that is enough for me. I think that the creator of this series really understands psychological horror or supernatural horror. As I dove into this series, I learned that the creator came up with this idea because of the pandemic, which is a really interesting way of how the real world influences art. Just the idea of being trapped alone in your home creates this supernatural fear of isolation, and I guess that's the real horror to this. It's that we're all isolated, and in this situation people are calling out for help and no one comes to help them, and that's how he must have felt during the pandemic, and that's how pretty much anyone in the world could relate to, because this affected everybody. And then in the most recent video on the channel up to this point, we get this series of footage that I'm assuming Mark had gotten from Caesar's house before the intruder followed him home. And then we get this shot of an analog television with a alien looking creature on the screen. And then we get another shot of Jesus, this one being darker than all the other ones, kind of more of like that motif of religion. And then it ends with a message saying that if you or a loved one have been exposed to any kind of analog television, you should contact your local authorities immediately, which is a good sign that everything we've been seeing up to this point has been misleading information on purpose. And I think that that really plays into the horror, that there's no source of information that feels trustworthy. You feel like you're on your own. You're informed to not call the police, or the police are informed not to respond to calls about intruders, presumably because the intruders would then follow them home, or the intruders are the ones making the information so that people won't call the police, or hopefully, not listen to common sense. Anyways, I really enjoy this series so far. I might make a follow-up video after it continues. Let me know what you think of it. And if you wanted to chat with us, you can jump in our Discord server. I'll link it in the description. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Hit that notification bell as well to get alerts for our next upload. The other two creators on this channel will be uploading this week. And good luck sleeping tonight.